Hello there. I'm Jack Butler, Deputy Opinion Editor of Free Expression, a new project of the Wall Street Journal. And we are undergoing an exciting project to introduce some of our new columnists. And the one that I am going to introduce to you all is John Miller. So welcome, John Miller.
Hi, Jack.
I know you, I'll just be honest and frank here. I know you as a director of Hillsdale College's Dow Journalism program, my former colleague at National Review, my partial creator at the College Fix, another enterprise you run for young student journalists. Are there any other hats that you wear that I should know about, other than the one that
Oh,
I'm
those,
debuting for you as a free expression columnist?
yeah, those are the key ones. I mean, what people may want to know is that Jack, you were my student once,
Yeah, we should probably
and
mention that.
and, and you're one of the best students I ever had, and it's been great to see you flourish in the world of journalism. But this is one of the joys of being director of the Dow Journalism program at Hillsdale College is you get to work with these young people who then go off and do amazing things in the world of media. And for me, it's great when students become colleagues and when students edit my own work, former students, I should say, edit my own work. And so it's a pleasure to join you here.
Well, that's very kind of you to say. I would say, however, that there is no such thing as a former student of John Miller. We're always learning things from you. So, but this is not about me. This is about you. So you've been generous with your time. You've been generous with your talents. Let's talk about you. How did you get your start in journalism?
Well, I was a kid who liked to read. And I guess when you're a kid who likes to read, you get drawn into writing, and teachers and parents guide you in that direction. So when I went off to, I had a high school newspaper that I worked for. And then when I went off to college at the University of Michigan, I wanted to try journalism. So I got involved with the Michigan Review, which was a newspaper there. This is back in the late 1980s. And from there, I just fell in love with it and professionally went into the field. So when I graduated, I went to Washington, D.C., got my first job at the New Republic, which was a very different magazine back then from what it is now, but an interesting one and a great place to start. And became a professional writer in D.C. and then eventually joined National Review, where I spent more than 27 years writing for it, recording podcasts, and it was really my major platform as a writer. And along the way, Hillsdale College came and asked me to run the journalism program. So I did that and remained active with National Review until earlier this year.
So that's a great broad sweep of your career. I think you're being somewhat modest in that summary, but we'll get into that. But first, before we get into any of the other specifics, I want to ask, why the J? It's my understanding there's a reason that it's John J. Miller.
Well, it's J for Joseph.
Yes.
And the reason I use a middle initial is because I have a super common name. There are lots of John Millers, and I've written about this, what it's like to have a common name. And the I knew this as a kid, obviously, and then I knew it in college. And in my dorm, there was another John Miller. So someone would go to the desk saying, "I want to find him," and they wouldn't. There's a 50% chance they would go to the right room. And so I knew this was kind of a professional challenge in a sense, and so I started using the middle initial as a way to distinguish from other John Millers. And it turns out, there was one who worked for the Wall Street Journal for many years as a trade reporter, but he used the middle initial W. And I've never met him, but we've had kind of a jokey relationship on social media with each other. And so when I got to Washington, D.C., there was a member of Congress called John Miller, and he later worked in the State Department. I remember that there was a time once I was calling a source, a guy I knew pretty well, in fact, but had some reasons to interview him about a topic, and we had a 5-minute conversation of just kind of catching up, how's the family, and all that. And at one point he stopped and he says, "Oh, wait. You're that John Miller. He had thought I was the other guy, the one who was working for the State Department, in fact. So this has been, Jack, this has been my burden is having a name like that. But I use the middle initial as a way to distinguish. And by the way, there's another writer called John J. Miller. He died a few years ago, but he was a science fiction writer and at some time collaborator with George R. Martin, the Game of
Oh,
Thrones guy. And so a few years ago, I used to get an email every 6 months or so from somebody asking me, "Are you that John J. Miller?" And I would, no, I'm not, sadly. Um, but that's why I use the middle initial.
makes sense. I share this burden. There are a lot of Jack Butlers in the world, and in fact, there is a Jack Butler. I don't think he's exclusively a science fiction author, but he is a writer who is based in Arkansas, and there's a literary prize named after him that perhaps I should try to win. But I think you've done a lot to distinguish yourself, not just from the other John Millers of the world, but from everyone. But I want to zoom in on your time at the New Republic, which I know enough of journalism history to understand that the New Republic of the 90s was a very interesting, lively, and in no ways monolithic politically place. There were conservatives there, there were sort of centrist Democrats there. It was very exciting. But among the people there during that time was a fellow by the name of Stephen Glass, and he's best known for making a whole bunch of stuff up and getting found out. But I want to ask you, did you personally shatter Stephen Glass?
No, I knew Stephen though, as we did not work at the magazine at the same time together, but I knew him through writer circles in Washington D.C. and we were friendly, and I admired him as a talented writer. I remember one time he did a cover story on what it was like to be a taxi driver in Washington D.C. It turns out, at least back then, this is in the 90s, it's quite dangerous,
Mm-hmm.
and you take your life into your own hands when you pick up a rider who might ask you to go to a sketchy neighborhood. And he did this marvelous story about this, which of course climaxed with him witnessing a stick up. And I remember I sent him a note. This was back. I actually wrote a note on a piece of paper and folded it and put it in an envelope and licked a stamp and mailed it. It's back in those days.
Yeah.
And I sent him an admiring note saying this is like one of the best things I've ever read. So I admired Stephen. I knew him socially. I'd hesitate to say we weren't close friends, but we were acquainted for sure and friendly. And then of course we all learned that he was making stuff up all along. He got caught, and by Chuck Lane, who was editor of the New Republic at that time, a guy I actually never worked with. He came later, but Stephen was this amazing high flying journalist who just looked like he was just doing the best work, and it all came crashing down because he was a fabulist. Not a plagiarist. He was a fabulist. He was making up stuff, and he did it repeatedly. He got caught, and it was a big scandal in journalism when it happened, and a black eye for the New Republic, and it obviously ended his career as a journalist.
Yeah. It's a very interesting story, and it's depicted in a movie that proves Hayden Christensen actually is a good actor if he has the right script. The movie's called Shattered Glass, and Chuck Lane is played by one of the Skarsgårds. I can never remember which one. I always mix them up. You have us watch it. This is another peek in behind the curtain. This is part of the Hillsdale College Dow Journalism program curriculum is watching this movie. So
One of my colleagues shows it in an intro to journalism course, and then I come in and say a little bit more about my personal experience. But yes, this is a lesson we want to impart to young journalists: is don't make up stuff.
yeah. So in your time at National Review and in writing and other publications, you've gone to a lot of places. You've also read a lot of books. You've profiled several candidates some of whom are now in incredibly prominent positions, Marco Rubio, Ted Cruz. Is there a particular highlight in terms of a place that you've visited or a person that you've talked to in all of these years? I mean, it's very hard to pick, but I'm going to make you pick anyway because that's how cruel I am.
Yeah, it is hard. One of the joys of journalism is you get to do so many things and visit places and meet people, and every day is different, and every article is a different topic. It's just a wonderful profession in that regard. I've had the honor of interviewing a president in the Oval Office, which was amazing. I mean, just to go into that room and on a business meeting basically, and sit and look around. And the first thing I wanted to do is like, is it an oval? And yes, it is an oval, right?
Mm. Fact
But to
check.
have
True.
exactly, I mean, it's just to sit there and interview the president. And this was George W. Bush, should say. It was an off the record interview with a few colleagues also. But what an honor that is, just to sit in that room, and which we all know about, we see it on television, but to go there and do your job, that was just that was incredible. You mentioned Marco Rubio. We did a story on him when he was running for the Senate in the year 2009. Nobody had ever heard of this guy. He announced that he was running. He was going up against, for the Republican nomination, a sitting governor who had held what looked to be a prohibitive lead in the polls. And Marco Rubio was at 3%, 5% or something. Had almost no name recognition, but he'd come by our office and we'd met him, and he was just this really impressive young candidate, well spoken, smart, Reagan-esque in a way that everybody at National Review kind of liked and enjoyed hearing, but just came in and startled us with who he, introducing himself. And he walked out, and we thought, this is a special kind of candidate. And so we decided to write a profile of him. I did it, and it wound up being a cover story. And we put him on the cover with the title "Yes, He Can," which was playing on the sort of Obama slogan, and it helped him rise. And he wound up winning the Republican nomination. He won the election the next year in 2010 as part of the Tea Party movement at the time. And it was I wanted to do a piece that just introduced him to our readers. Meet Marco Rubio, who is this guy, and what is the challenge before him. But it was fun to see the piece contribute to the creation of a career that's thriving.
Yeah. As I've mentioned, you have quite the wide range of topics. So you've gone from the Oval Office to Frankenmuth, Michigan. What is it called? Christmas City? Is that the name for it?
Well, yeah, Frankenmuth, Michigan is a place everybody in Michigan knows, and beyond Michigan too. It has the world's largest Christmas store,
Yeah.
and it's been there for a long, long time. There's more to Frankenmuth than Bronner's, as this store is called. But Bronner's is really the best known thing about the town, and so I did a story on what is the Christmas store, and how did it become the world's biggest Christmas store, and who created it, and what goes on behind the scenes. And so I've been going to this place since I was a kid, as a consumer, stopping with your parents to, buy a new Christmas ornament for the year or whatever, or get some decorations. But I decided I wanted to hear the business story behind it, and so I went up there and spent a day and learned about everything they do, and where their ornaments come from, and how they custom order so many of them, and then wrote it up.
Yeah, this is one thing of the many. I admire you and your work greatly. I'll just be forthright about that. But one of the favorite veins of yours that I derive this enjoyment from is these Americana pieces that I've tried to write some of my own. These rovings across the country, exploring sometimes neglected or forgotten corners of American life, because this is a big, great, beautiful, and weird country full of stuff like that. And you were chronicling all that stuff before I was, and now I try to do it when I can. So, in fact, a good recent example of this was something you wrote for the Wall Street Journal about the wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald, which you and I, as Midwesterners with Michigan ties, obviously you live there. I have some ties there, but not as many as you. We are deeply interested in. So, what do you think your output for free expression will consist of? Are you going to write about stuff like this? Are you going to write about politics more broadly, or anything you want in between.
I hope all the above. I'm going to do a piece every other week for free expression. I got a few ideas that I'm working on, but I hope it'll have some range, dealing with cultural topics, maybe some travel reporting along the lines of what you just suggested. Americana, celebrations of America in different ways, of free minds and free markets. Some politics, maybe. We'll see what the news drives. I don't think I'll be doing a political piece from Washington that's driven by like whatever the president said last week, but trends in the country politically, culturally, socially, all that. I'll try and bring some ideas to that, and some original reporting.
Yeah, well, you're in a great place for it because Michigan is beginning again. There's what, two open? No, one open Senate seat, an open governor's seat. It's a very exciting state politically, and it's perennially up for grabs now at the presidential level. It flips back and forth. So,
Yeah, it's a is it a purple state? It's maybe purple-ish, a little bit blue in a sense, but it's a place where Republicans can win and
mhm.
do win. There isn't the governor's race is wide open. There's a Senate race that could be close next year, and of course could have consequences in terms of who controls the government, or whether Republicans maintain control of at least one, part of one branch of the government, going forward. But it's a state it's my home state. I know it well. I love it, and it's diverse. It has a lot of cultural conservatism in a sense, but also a lot of Union history, and it creates a blend that is it's Trump country in a lot of ways. Although it is a swing state, and he won it, and then he lost it, and then he won it. And who knows what'll happen in 2026? But it's a thing I'll be watching.
Great. Well, I'm looking forward to seeing what you write for us, not just as an admirer of yours, but as an admirer of good writing, which you are eminently capable of, and I'm very excited.
Well, thank you, Jack. It's great to be colleagues.
Yes, indeed.